several men that when they talk about their first time exposed to porn, they were really grossed out. Like, what happened to that feeling? What happened to the feeling of like, this is unnatural and it's disgusting and just scary?
And that's the bigger question is like, we can talk to people all day about porn and how it's hurting you, but if you don't have anywhere else to go, it's probably going to catch up to you again. Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. And guess what? We're going to talk about AI today. We've done it before, but this is a little bit more nuanced. This is a trend that I see. It's already in our world and is going to become more and more prevalent. And that is kind of make your own pornography, text to image, text to video kind of stuff. And I see a lot of justifications coming in. And so I just wanted to unpack this with Benji. What does it mean to humanity? What does it mean to us as people if we start using AI for stuff like this? And how do we make sure that we stay on track with our goals as humanity to be functional, healthy people? So we're going to unpack, is AI nudity okay? And surrounding issues, because this seems like a novel idea, but I swear to you, this is going to be day-to-day stuff. There's going to be, I'm sure, laws in place or stuff. I don't even know. There's a lot of stuff coming at us that we can't even fathom. So let's unpack it together. It's me and Benji talking about, is AI nudity all right? Hey, dears. Hello, all you dears.
Hello.
This
Ears and
when I was just starting to get to know my wife and we were like very preliminary, not matched, just kind of checking each other out. She wrote to me and she said, "Hi, dear." And I was like, oh, this girl, she loves me. And then I told her later, she's like, no, that's just in English. This is how we're supposed to address people. I was like, it was just a generic term. And I took it so personally. So when I hear dear, and I see that like when I communicate with people from India and certain countries, the English that they learn is like, they'll say, hello, dear. And for us, it's very meaningful, right? If somebody calls you dear, it's like, it's very ingratiating, right? It's
dearment.
yeah, it's very cute. So hello,
Or honey.
dears.
Down
Hi.
south, I do call people honey. I'm guilty of it all the time. It's like, hey, honey. If you want something, if you want to be kind to someone and you want something from them, it's like, call them honey. When I got blessed, I called my wife Yobo, which if you watch any Korean dramas at this point, it's something that, couples say to each other. I thought it was reasonable to say Yobo, but she laughed in my face because apparently that's what old couples call each other, not blessed that barely know each other. So that was fun.
You got to get those out of the way. You got to take some swings, have your wife laugh in your face, and then that's how your ego diminishes and love increases.
There you go.
Don't play it safe all the time, guys.
We settled on, I call her mommy now because of the kids, right? Just mommy. And she calls me Benji, which is so great. So great.
I know that Japanese people do this. I mean, I remember Akira and Makiko calling mama papa. Yeah. And that's just disturbing to me. I can't get with that. I can't call my wife my mama. I just can't. I'm good. I don't call my mama. Anyway, so, but it's cute. It's a Japanese thing. I don't know. It's
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because for some people, honey might be really, really weird because it's a sticky substance that bears love. So who knows? Not to judge, just I can't get with it. So put in the comments below. What do you call your spouse or future spouse? What do you want to? If you're single, do you have any in your back pocket that? Because I think sometimes you fantasize about when I have a wife, I want to call her darling, my darling, or something like that.
Baby cakes.
Yeah.
Honey boo.
And then you just kind of fall into some. Sometimes you I think you go through different iterations and you realize that some just don't seem to work well and others work better than others. We stuck with honey. We call each other honey somehow. I don't know. But I see a lot of people do that, and so it seems kind of generic that she's just my honey. But there's many other honeys, so
I've
you'll
always
find your
wanted my
way.
wife. I've always wanted her to call me something special from day one. And I was throwing out these offers to her, right, to see what would stick, and she's stuck with Benji until this day, right? Benji, Benji,
That's
Benji.
something special.
Um, it tells you a lot about her character, even to the point where when our kids are really young, they don't know, like 1, 2 years old, they're learning to talk. They don't know. They would call me Benji too. Not all the time, just Benji, right? Because he's always like, Benji, dinner's ready. They'd be like, Benji, like this. They grew out of that, thankfully.
Yeah, you shook it out of them. Don't you ever. Okay, everybody. So this week I lost my voice and it came back just. This episode is sponsored by my new voice, which is I have a good radio voice now. That's why I love getting sick is you get this kind of voice. You get a real raspy voice. And today, sponsored by this new voice, we wanted to talk and get ahead of the curve because there's stuff coming at us from all directions. And if you're not a nerd like me, you might not see it coming until it's already here. But already there is, I'm sure you all know, there's text to image and there's text to video. This text to video is getting really good. I think Google has a new model that just came out. Everybody has a new model and they're constantly just coming up perpetually. And they're getting so good and they're free, some of them. Like they just make them free because when you use it, it's helping their machine get smarter. So it's kind of like, it's worth it for them. But where this gets really awkward is when there's text to video and it's full on porn and you can make porn scenes and you can make whatever you want. And I keep up with this stuff. And I heard that there's already, because China is weird with AI, they really want to win this war. It seems like America and China are already at war, about AI, because whoever wins the AI war wins humanity, apparently. And so they have some strict laws in some respects, but then apparently porn is kind of a free-for-all a little bit. And so it's already very much a reality in China. And it's very realistic. So then the question is, well, what's the problem, right? Because it's not even real people. And I can tell that this is going to be a giant, like there's already, Benji, I don't know, you're clean these days. You don't even go on the internet. You don't even know how to open up your computer at this point. Benji is talking to me through his kids. This is his adult son. He stands on the side and just whispers to his son, like Cyrano de Bergerac. But you don't really go online so much, yeah?
I stay away. I don't trust the internet or myself. Say that.
Perfect.
But it's also not a modern day dilemma in the moral dilemma sense, right? Because like anime porn has existed for decades. And so
Sure.
the same moral dilemma exists there, but it's going to be more rampant now because of the internet and AI and stuff. The stuff that's not human, so it's like, what's the big deal kind of thing.
Yeah, well, so online, there's just this ever-growing sense that something's about to change, right? There's a lot of predictions, a lot of things going on, but definitely in terms of, let's say, the humanity of it all, that was one big argument that, let's say, the anti-porn people always had, which is it's bad for humans, right? So like porn actresses typically justify when they're making porn, they're like, yeah, no, it's totally fine. And then after they retire, they're like, it was a living hell. And they just couldn't say that when they were making it because they had to find a way to justify it, right? Just like a drug addict is like, it's not so bad, it's not so bad, it's not so bad. And then after, you're like, it was the worst, right? But now in porn 2.0, there's OnlyFans, right? Which is now just complete normalization of porn as a part-time job for people. And people aren't ashamed of it at all. It's really like porn is just kind of dancing and be like, look, I'm just like anybody else, right? So that was already kind of the trend, is that it's okay, right? Because these people, it's consensual, and people are making good money. It's just they're calling the OnlyFans creators call themselves content creators, so it's no big deal. It's just like any other content, just minus the clothes, right? So already it's a slippery slope that like falls straight down. It's like a 90-degree curve down. It's very slippery. And then beyond that, now you're talking about robots, and they're just pixels. They're not even real people. So really, are you hurting anybody? So I want to come from the place, Benji, you and I, where we can unpack this like rational human beings who are not reacting and who are not judging, because the moral religious argument is always so reactive, and it's not so attractive. It's just really restrictive. But then also the liberal perspective of I don't mean politically liberal. I just mean like no rules perspective is, it's just that it's free for all. And that obviously doesn't work either. So how do we make sense of all this, Benji?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say, on the judgment side, let's take a little judgment, little loving judgment. If that exists, people, there's a percentage of people listening to this that will be triggered, right? And I know you're listening, and I just want to say, don't be triggered. And if you are, like, importantly, observe that, right? But don't say like, oh, Hainun is talking about stuff. And it's like, if you can't live in a world where porn exists and a discussion around porn exists, and you can't be triggered by that sexually, then there's bigger problems at hand. You know what I'm saying? And so importantly is just to observe your thoughts and feelings and emotions when we're talking about this stuff and your behavior, and just observe it and try to deal with that, right? And but I would say that in terms of the like battle against pornography, there are many organizations that do the decrease the supply side of the battle, which is let's address the governmental regulations, let's address Google, let's attack Google, let's attack these big tech companies, it's awareness campaigns, this type of legislative stuff. And then there's the kind of decrease the demand side of things, which is more so what we're focused on, which is how do we help people identify why whether it's moral or not, like, what do you want with your life? And is this healthy for you? Do you want to do this? Is this remotely accurate in terms of what sexuality is? And if it's what you don't want in your life, then let's get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely heavily where we weigh, is helping people reduce the demand for porn. And as a natural byproduct, porn doesn't exist, right? In a world where nobody wants it or thinks it's gross and degenerate, porn doesn't have an avenue to make profit, right? And so there's definitely a place for everything, because we could point fingers at the decrease the supply people and say, you guys are wasting your time, you're wasting your money, we have to go to the source of the problem, right? We could do that, but there's a place for everything. Like, we need both, I would say. We need
Sure.
organizations and people and groups that are going to fight like hell against big tech, against the porn industry, and we need the people that are actually going to do the healing work, which is definitely a more long-term game that we're playing. But it's just that we need both angles, all angles available. And then you have like the parents group kind of school of thought, which is like, how do we get our parents to really educate well our children and schools about sexuality in a healthy, God-centered way, right? And so there are different angles, and that's just to say that like our emphasis is really helping you identify, regardless of whether AI porn, animated porn, real people porn is moral or not. Regardless of that, it's like, what is your heart? What is your conscience? Your original mind? What does God tell you? What do you want in your life? Is that the life that you want? Is that who you want to be? Whether it's right or wrong or going to heaven or hell, does it matter if that's not what you want, Yeah, that's what I'd say about it.
Yeah, there's, in terms of policy and all that, yeah, I mean, they're a billion paces behind AI, right? So they don't even know what to do. They're just running with it. So definitely can't rely on policies to catch up. There's still like Pierre Beauregard, shout out to Uncle Pierre, is always on top of the policy game in Canada. They've been trying to just get like verification laws put in place for porn websites in Canada, and it keeps on getting shut down. So that means that they're just asking, hey, how when you go to a store, and you're 12, you can't buy cigarettes because you have to show ID and you have to prove that you're old enough to buy cigarettes or alcohol. Let's do that with porn. And then the people who make decisions are like, no, that's unreasonable because 8-year-olds should be watching people hurting each other and violate each other online at will because that's a fantastic idea, right? So just basic common sense, has already failed policymakers, right? Again and again. Can't wait for them. So it's much more like this is a conversation for you, the consumer of the internet, to really dial in who it is that you want to be online, right? And where do you want to go online? Because things like, we're talking about typing in a few prompts and you can get anything you want. Soon enough, it's going to be full movies. You're like, make me something like a Mission Impossible movie, but make the guy a gorilla and set it in the year 1952. Make it black and white. Make it 70% serious, 30% humor, and it'll be able to do all this stuff, right? So in that space of endless possibilities, you have to figure out, well, which world do I want to live in? Well, what things do I want to be okay or not? Because the more that you watch stuff, the more that it just becomes normal to you. If you watch videos of people getting punched in the head a lot, then you stop losing the feeling of, oh my God, that is shocking and shouldn't happen. And it just becomes normal, right? Yeah. And same with porn is the normalization of violence and hatred. You get used to hearing words of people in the physical act of sex shouting hatred at each other, and that becomes normal to you. And through all the studies, it shows very clearly that this is coming into people's sexual lives. Women are getting hurt more. There's like a lot of crazy stuff happening. But this is through repetition. And it doesn't matter, first of all, if the people are real or not on the screen. Anime is a great example of that, Benji, right? That stuff is so weird. I never got into that in general, just in terms of like, I don't watch cartoons. I'm an adult. In my mind, you're just like a... I know it's a big thing in Japan, but I could never see myself like going out of my way to read comics or anything like that.
Offended like more than half of our audience.
Yeah, great. You guys fight for it. I don't care. I'm just... There you go. Yeah, it's... I lost my place. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, anime is a good example.
Oh, yes. So sorry. Because it's like really normalizes all the only images I've ever seen of, even out in Vietnam, there's a giant bookstore and there's an anime section, and it was all schoolgirls. It was like, oh my God, I don't think this is healthy. Like, just they're all just really scantily clad schoolgirls. Like, that repetition forms a pattern that, in a bad sense, turns into a fetish or turns into some weird thing that you got now. But it's just through repetition. You wouldn't... People say, no, this is just what I like. No, it's not. It's not, because if you were born 300 years ago, you like seeing a schoolgirl outfit has nothing. It's just a weird outfit because it's not what people wear at your period of time. So we're conditioned so much. So what you put into your mind really, really is super important, and choosing what you want to normalize through repetition.
Yeah. And we have to make that decision now, because this is the most doom and gloom thing that I think I could ever say, is that it will get so much worse than we can imagine. Just like you just outlined the current, right? Like AI capabilities of porn. This is what I tell my kids, like, or my son at least, he's 10. In his lifetime, you will be able to own an AI robot that looks, feels, and acts like a human that you can have sex with anytime. And it will completely replace, artificially speaking, the need for a human in my son's lifetime. Like, I'm fervently believing that. That's all. And if we think for some reason like, oh no, all of humanity is going to be morally aware and not going to go down there. It's like, no, there are people that are going to say no to it, and there are people that are going to go 100% in on it. And so, especially right now at this pivotal time, we have to be decisive and say, like, I don't want to go down that road. I don't want myself, my lineage, right, importantly, to go down the road of engaging that stuff. And we just have to make a fervent decision. And that's not a new dilemma, right? This has existed for thousands of years. Like, think of all the religious, um, uprisings or revolutions, or like just the Amish, for example. I was looking into them. Like, why did they start doing that kind of stuff? Why did they have this divergent cultural perspective? It's because they saw culture, humanity going down a certain way. And they were like, you know what? I don't want me and my family and my legacy to go down there. I'm gonna create something new, a new community, a new environment. And that's why those communities exist, right? And so we like to think, I think biologically, if things are gonna get really bad or they're gonna get better, I think they're going to get really bad, probably worse than we can imagine in terms of the accessibility of sexually over sexual stuff and unhealthy stuff because of demand for it. But also, it doesn't have to be that way for everyone. There can be a kind of divergence in our own culture and our own families. And that's a decision we got to make now, because this is happening rapidly, very fast, right?
Oh yes, Benji here, guys. If you've benefited from this episode and you love the podcast, then please consider becoming a donor for High Noon. It is a special privilege to be a donor. If you want to donate just $10 a month or $20 a month or $100 a month, if you want some way to contribute to something really, really impactful, and you have some cash to do that, then please let High Noon be that for you. We welcome you. We are still a nonprofit, and we use all the funds to help support our programs, to change the lives of lots of people and travel the world and do epic stuff like that. So please go to highnoon.org/donate, and please help us out. All right, see ya.
Well, so, okay, let's go back to this pixel idea. Like, it's a part of, your lineage, and also just, I was thinking about titling this episode something about, your avatar, right? Because you have an online self, and that's going to have a reputation. Like, you have an IP address on your computer or whatever, but just with the way things are going, it looks like you're going to have an online life, and then you'll have an in-person life, and they will both have money, and they will both have credit or status or whatever. You don't want to be a scuzz bucket here in this world. You don't want to be a creepo here. Why is it okay that we can be creepy online? Why is it, like, even just on social media, well, the things that people say to each other is not the same as what you, like, in a grocery store, like, hey, I hate your opinions on politics. You should die, right? That's so wildly inappropriate in real life, but somehow it's okay online. But it's because we believe that there's somehow separation between our online self and our real life self, but they feed each other for sure, right? So you won't be hurting a human being's feelings by making, I mean, I gotta really clarify that, but like, if you make porn through a prompt and it's not real people, you're still hurting yourself. And if you're in a relationship, you're hurting those people, right? But the actual people on the screen that you're watching are not real people, and they're not being hurt. Who's being hurt in that interaction? Well, one really interesting thing that people don't think about is that we are training AI, and AI, I'm talking about like many, many touch points of AI. There's different models like Grok or ChatGPT or whatever, you can see that they're separate now, but they're going to kind of come together and merge. Let's just say the general awareness of artificial intelligence, we're feeding it with every interaction, and we're making it either smart and benevolent or stupid and malevolent and hateful. And when we teach it about porn and stuff like that, then we're creating this monster, right? So I see it as humanity's first child that we're giving birth to. And we're going to make it really dysfunctional if we feed it the wrong inputs, right? So every time you do stupid stuff with AI, you're feeding it information that's making it stupider or more hateful, or just like you would a kid, you're feeding it the wrong inputs.
And I think that this, not to sound grim or anything, but that's what we're going to do. I mean, as long as people are stupid, we're going to create stupid. You know what I'm saying? And I have actually maybe a more like positive outlook in the end. I think in the short term, it's going to be really hard because we're going to have to learn from all those mistakes, and it's going to be. I just know it's going to be dire. Just look at the writings on the wall. Look at the math. Look at how fast the porn industry is developing. It's going to get really dire very quick, and then it's going to get better because we're going to learn from the mistakes. We're going to evolve, morally speaking, in humanity, and we're going to live in a more Channel era, like long term speaking. But I think it's going to get pretty dark pretty quick, and that's why I think we just got to be deliberate about how we're spending our time online, and especially our kids. What our kids are doing, and it's not to be fearful or anything. It's like the way I'm framing like the internet for my family right now is that it's not that I don't want them to be influenced or exposed to anything negative. It's just that there are very few things that I'm really inspired by online, and when I do find those things, that's what I want my kids to pour their energy into and their creative energy into. And usually it's more of a net positive for our kids and our environment and our home in the end than consuming anything else. But right now, the majority of stuff that I see is like, it's just not inspiring. It just feels like a drag. It just feels like it's going to make my kids dumber,
So that's a part of the plan, right? Is what do you want to use your time for? At the end of the day, it's always so ridiculous that you are stimulating one of, if not the most sacred energies that we have access to. It's the energy that creates life, that passes your lineage. It's like, it's so much deeper, and you're stimulating it by staring at a device with people who don't care about you. And in this case, they're pixels that aren't even real. So you're stimulating something sacred with something stupid. How's that going to pan out over the long term, right? And what are you digging for? That's the other thing. It's always like, I saw this really intelligent guy. I've been following him very reluctantly because I really despise a lot of what he has to say, but he also has some clever things to say. So I'm trying to figure out, like, who is this guy? He's a former Christian pastor he's now really into aliens and stuff like that. He was saying that the Christian purity movement is totally wrong and false, but also the New Age polyamorous movement is totally wrong and totally false. And he was saying because it is a sacred energy, but it shouldn't just be for one person. This is his conclusion, right? And he's a really smart guy. But he never defined what is the purpose of sex. And I can tell you that I know this dude, he doesn't have any kids, right? So it's like, it's very relativistic in this kind of, he's very smart, very intellectual, but lacks the depth of knowing what is the purpose of sex. And this is like, anybody who listens to this podcast, you have access, not because of us, but because of True Parents and because of what we kind of established High Noon as a foundation under True Parents. They gave us the keys to understanding the most important information we can understand, especially about sex, which is probably the most important area to get right in your life, because otherwise you're very liable to lose everything in your life. If you can understand the purpose of sex, and it is to connect to Heavenly Parent, connect to yourself, to connect to others. If you use it well, then you have superpowers. And if you use it poorly, then you lose all of your humanity. So every time you engage with pixels, whether it's real people or just text prompts, whatever, you're losing a part of your humanity. And that's the feeling that people feel when they reach out to us at High Noon and say, I don't feel good. I want to get rid of porn. That feeling of not feeling good is, I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like my true self, because you've given away a piece of your humanity through watching porn. And in order to regain that humanity back, it's to reestablish a healthy relationship with heavenly sexuality.
Yeah. I personally, like our couple, I was really struggling to find an educational model for the purpose of this relationship, right? Like a sexual relationship, because we've had our struggles, right? Especially early on. in a relationship, and we've like seen a dramatic increase in our fulfillment, right? But I think the impetus for that changing point was really this curiosity to figure out what is like, what's the purpose of this relationship of sex? Because everywhere I looked, I was looking for books, podcasts, I was reading, listening to a bunch of stuff, and everything I found was either super secular, which is, it's like it has a lot of really important, I don't want to say tips and tricks, but like just practical things, tools and know-how. But it was so gross and grotesque because the conclusion was always, well, you need to explore yourself sexually, right? That was like the recommendation. Or you need to sleep around with a lot of people in order to really experience the fullness of sexuality. And it kind of took old teachings and old ways of thinking and twisted it for modern day need or desires, right? Just to sleep around and stuff. And that was like one side, which is a lot of content is focused on. It's just like the purpose of sex is personal fulfillment and pleasure. And how do I get as much personal pleasure as possible? Which is, to me, on my conscience, just like, it's just gross. It doesn't feel, it's like, that's the end, like that's it. And I kept having this feeling like that's all this is about. The sexuality is just personal pleasure, right? And then you look more into the spiritual side of things, and that side of things is usually very religious, right? It's not very practical. It's usually kind of more theological and kind of goes down this rabbit hole and this road of very, very esoteric stuff. And then the Core of the Universe came out, right? This is the shout out to the book. Core of the Universe came out, and when I read that, I was like, this describes the spiritual significance, like you're saying, more than just me, myself with my spouse connecting, but also with God connecting. And it's also practical because of the kind of contextual explanations that are in the book, right? And your father especially gave a lot of more practical guidance and stuff than most religious, leaders do. And so for me, it was like the perfect balance that I was looking for. Is like, this feels like it doesn't exist. I tried so hard looking for something that was not too spiritual or too, secular and practical. And it was like the perfect mid ground. And that for me, it was like the turning point where we started to just like practice more things about like practicing connecting, not just for like pleasure and orgasmic stuff, but just being together and spiritually connected in the end.
Yeah, I think it's, again, even you and myself, it's like, it makes sense. And it's so sensical and so normal to us because we're steeped in it that we forget that this is the difference between heaven and hell for most people, that they haven't established this, they haven't figured it out. And it's so clear. It's just like, if your sexuality is not connected to intimacy, like real, genuine intimacy of to become one, chanuguk, like when your heart is fully together with your spouse and together with God, all in a trinity, right? Your heart, God's heart, your spouse's heart. If those three things are together, then it creates there's no separation anymore. There's a uniformity. There's a wholeness that happens that can only occur through the physical and spiritual transcendental act of making love that can never be established in any other way. Your spouse has to fully give their heart. And of course, Heavenly Parents got to be there with God's heart. But that's always there. And porn has nothing to do with your heart. I mean, you turn off your loving shimjung heart, and then what's available is your needy, childish heart that just wants validation and stuff like that. It's not that you don't have a heart. It's your self-serving, needy heart that will never be satiated or sated. It's always hungry. That's why like the idea of typing in stuff and getting whatever you want, there's no end to that. It's so like, with the physical act of lovemaking, there's a beginning, middle, and end, usually, And with porn, people are always like, I don't just watch porn for like a minute. I watch it for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Like, what is that? What are you looking for? What are you doing? Right? There's this hunger, this primal hunger that you'll never sate, you'll never fulfill through that act because it wants so much more than it will ever get through watching porn, you know? So if you can just make more and more and more, it's just like you're going to lose your life, man. It's so many hours, so many wasted hours, so much wasted
Yeah.
energy thinking about and feeling emotionally connected to robots, pixels,
Yeah.
nothing.
I remember one time when I was younger, I think this might be helpful for some people that are struggling with porn. I remember one time I was in that state of like arousal and I was searching for stuff. And I remember kind of having a moment of transcending the pleasure, like the seeking out of some kind of pleasure, right? And I remember feeling simultaneously like this is the most important thing in my life right now. Like this is the best thing in the world, right? When someone's in a state of any addiction or primal, that having that primal drive, there's nothing else that exists. You could be stressing out of your mind about finances, relationships. You could be like taking a test the next day, an exam. But when you're in that mode, it's like nothing is more amazing than this, you know? And I remember feeling that, like that feeling, but then simultaneously taking a step back and being like, I remember thinking, this is not new, this feeling. Like, this is humanity's struggle. And I'm not, it felt really just like you said, primal. And I was like, is this it? Like, is this it? Is this the whole point? Is like my mind or body feels like this is everything right now, but it can't be. It can't be everything because this is not a new struggle. This is not a new, desire that I just stumbled upon one day on the internet, and it just was like gross. I remember feeling like, this, like I want more than this. This is not the ceiling of connection and capability and like true genuine enjoyment for my life. Um, and so it was a weird moment, but I think that when we take a step back and just observe ourselves when we're in those moments, and it doesn't have to be porn, it could be food, right? Junk food, my goodness, sugar. It's just like, it's not new. It's not a new struggle. This is what humanity's been struggling with forever, is just very, very basic, fundamental, rudimentary desire. And it's kind of gross. Like if you just make that your whole world.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody, I feel like we're making our points clear. But to really kind of end on the actual subject of AI nudity in particular, there's a lot of people who will want to believe with every fiber of their being that somehow this is better for me. It's not as bad as watching real porn. Your mind is going to want to go there so badly, and you're going to want to believe it so badly. It's like a marketing ploy that just, is not true, but you want to believe it so much. Like, hamburgers are fantastic for you. This new burger, it's the healthy burger,
Add
right? And like,
lettuce,
yeah,
potatoes.
yeah, it's like, you want to believe it so badly that they figured it out how to crack the code on making healthy burgers. Um, but you have to come strapped with some ammunition here. You gotta put up a fight because I want to unpack that together with you, Benji, a little bit. Like, um, is it better to watch fake people than to watch real people, or is it even worth having that discussion in your mind? Have you already gone too far into justification land at that point?
Yeah, I think that's a question that we do get actually, and I think will come up more. Is this better than that? And I think my response to that is always, if you have to ask that question, it means the underlying assumptions are wrong or flawed a bit, because it kind of implies that that one is always better than the other. Like it's always better, and we like to think like that. It's like we want to be clear, like, okay, if I'm doing this, then it is objectively better than this. But that's not how life works, right? Because then you start justifying and making weird things. Because if you say, like AI porn is better than real porn, But what if the real porn is more like softcore, whatever, and then the AI porn is super hardcore stuff? Is that better? Not really, right? And so I think
Yeah.
the issue is not like what's better. It's more like, what is it doing to me? And is it healthy? Is what I want? Is it what I want in my
Yeah.
life? Um, then you get rid of it. And it's hard to say this, I know, but like if you don't want to change, then I don't know. I don't know what we can do. Like you're just gonna
Yeah.
have to suffer through that experience of going through that whole ordeal of addiction and hopefully coming out the other side. But if you are just like, if someone just wants to justify, whatever existence, then there's not much I can say. You know what I'm saying? Like we can try to convince people, but at the end of the day, like who do you want to be? And
Yeah.
does that do that?
Yeah.
Anything? Like if so, then okay, like good for you. Like go do that. And you have to deal with the consequences. And I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, we're not going to hold everyone's hand and tell you that this is better or worse or right or wrong. And yeah,
No, but we wanna help you just see a couple trends here.
well,
If you are sitting in a dumpster and we walk by and you're eating food in a dumpster and it's like, a half-eaten sandwich, we're like, bro, are you eating a half-eaten sandwich in a dumpster? Like, yeah, but I could be eating that thing over. That sandwich over there is a rotting sandwich. This is like
mm,
freshly thrown out garbage. That's like old garbage. And like, you're still in a dumpster
yeah,
eating
yeah,
a half-eaten sandwich. What are you doing? You don't have to, you have a fridge at home with a loving family. Get out of the
yeah,
dumpster, walk away, close the
yeah.
dumpster, light it on fire if you need to, and go home and eat some real food. What are you doing? Because when you've gotten to the place where you're like, well, this porn's probably less harmful than this porn. It's like, no, you've jumped off the ship and you're swimming in the wrong direction. Like we're going this way, it's the wrong conversation to be having.
It's
It's
comparing
all a
rotten.
mess.
It's comparing rotten apples with rotten oranges.
Sure, yeah. It's all trash. I think definitely in my family, we tend not to have junk food in the house. And if any, we always have guests. Like I was sick the other day and then my sister-in-law came over and she just smuggled in cookies into our house, right? So sometimes people, they coerce us into their lifestyle. Anyway,
Like
if we
me,
ever have
we have,
junk food in our house and they're like, oh, is this stuff bad? Like the expiration date, has it gone bad? And it's like, it can't go bad because it was never good. So it's
mm,
not worse, it's still bad, right? And it's kind of like an ongoing joke that we have. But it's the same thing with porn is like, it's really, really clear. The data is very clear that, people justify if I just watch porn, it stops me from doing these things in person. And that's totally not the case. Porn will always guide you towards more deviant, violent stuff that you would never normally access. And then you really, really want to enact this stuff. And maybe you don't enact exactly the stuff that you watch, but you start enacting stuff that doesn't seem so bad anymore because you're watching worse stuff. But this stuff, if you hadn't watched porn altogether, would already be abhorrent to you. It's like, it wouldn't have been planted in your mind without porn. So with porn, it's all bad. And it's all feeding a worldview that is against love because
yeah,
the actors, the OnlyFanners, and even the digital AI bots have nothing to do with love in any real sense. And they're not guiding you back to God and your true self. They're not guiding you towards sustainable love and relationships that are meaningful, that'll feed your soul at all. They're doing the exact opposite and taking you in the exact opposite direction to a place where you're lonely and sad and wonder, what does it all mean? Is it worth it? That's the end game. That's the end game. Regardless of its AI or whatever, it's all feeds the same mechanisms that stimulate your body and not your soul.
yeah. People that people are really struggling with porn, especially people that know this and have heard us talk about the harms of porn and masturbation. I think the turning point for them will be not recognizing like what will porn do to me, but what has porn already done to me. And that's the kind of impetus for change that I'm talking about, where it's like reflecting on how has my exposure to this stuff already affected me and my relationships.
Yeah.
Already, not someday, not when I'm blessed, not when I have kids, right? Which is the typical kind of tempting line of thinking. But it's how does it already affect me to feel that, to really feel that? And that's when people change. It's like, because otherwise it's like, why not just continue? If I don't fundamentally believe that this is impacting me yet, why should I change? I'll just change when I'm impacted more, right? And so there's this kind of just common belief that like it's going to impact me someday. And so that's why I should, kind of learn about the harms of it and that kind of stuff. And what'll it do to my sexual organ, to my brain? It's like, no, it's already affected things. Like, just think about this. I have talked with several men that when they talk about their first time exposed to porn, they were really grossed out, right? Like, what happened to that feeling? What happened to the feeling of like, this is unnatural and it's disgusting and
Mhm.
just scary? It's like, well, it was desensitization. That's what happened. It's like over time, it didn't become gross anymore. But that's how we should view stuff like that, acts like that, things that are just like artificial forms of sexuality that just feels fake and gross. And then the desensitization kicks in. Like that is a reality that it is already affecting someone to that extent. Is that there's just it's not gross anymore. It's actually I seek it out. Like that type of thing is where we should pause and say like, okay, I need to change something. I want to change something.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And the opposite also is just like, it's so hard for people to somehow relate with the idea of a North Star goal, but it's just like when you're at your very best and you're just enamored with life, like you're doing something that you're really passionate about, the last thing you want to do is waste time and energy doing anything else. So what are you doing? Why don't you just use that energy well? If you're single, there's so many opportunities that you have that you will not have when you are older and when you get married and building a business, traveling the world. There's all sorts of stuff that become a little bit more complicated. So
Yeah.
when you start to realize the amount of sacrifice that you've been enabling porn to exist in your life, like some leech that's just sucking your will to live, and you keep on feeding it with your time and energy, and you just cut it off, and you're like, wait, what can I be doing now that I don't have this giant leech siphoning my essence? I can go at full speed. In what direction to do what? That's the bigger question, is like, we can talk to people all day about porn and how it's hurting you, but if you don't have anywhere else to go, it's probably going to catch up to you again. It's just like life will just get too heavy and you'll want to escape again. So you got to have somewhere to go. It's just a non-negotiable fact in life. And that doesn't mean a grand mission if you don't have one. Don't worry about that. That comes with time, but like something
Mm.
to build, for God's sakes,
Mhm.
build something.
Yeah, I like that point. Something. I've seen guys just get really excited about random stuff like basketball. And I've also seen people get stuck because they did feel like I have to have this grand mission in my North Star. And they kind
Yeah.
of are paralyzed because they're overanalyzing what is my North Star? What is my North Star? And I'm gonna watch porn and masturbate in the meantime until I figure it out. Um, yeah, so I like that. Just start with something
It's
and move
just
forward.
3 months at a time. Like if you obsessed about something, and obsessions in context and, if you use them well, if you use them instead of use them as a tool of escape, they can serve you so well. Like obsessing about learning a craft or a skill every 3 months, you could become a renaissance man. You could learn so many different cool things and actually be interesting to yourself. The reason why people distract themselves from themselves is because they're not interesting to themselves. If you can't just sit there and just be okay, just reading a book or writing or something, you need perpetual distraction. It's because you don't like being with yourself. You don't like being with your own thoughts. You gotta find stuff that makes you interesting to you. So anyway, this is at the end of the day gonna be your salvation, is having somewhere to go in life and somewhere to put your time and energy. Otherwise, there's gonna be, like Benji said, too many options to escape, to run away through AI. They're getting really interesting. But you won't feel good at the end of a session. So we just want to help you by letting you get ahead of this conversation. I don't think it's a conversation that many people are having because it's very new, but it's going to be all over the place. And there's going to be, now there's AI influencers, right? And you can own AI people. You don't think that there's going to be AI prostitutes, AI, all sorts of stuff? Of course. And so this stuff we want to get ahead of it by letting you know that regardless of the concoction, the mixture of kind of what porn might look like or might feel like, it's all the same. If your sexuality takes you away from yourself, from reality, from Heavenly Parent, and from connecting to real people who are invested in a relationship over the long term, it'll just lead you down a dark, dark road where you will feel lonelier than ever before. So, yeah, please find meaning, find purpose, and not for the rest of your life, for 3 months at a time. That's always the North Star goal, is just like 3 months. You can do that. Any last words, Bon Chat?
Yep. No, we're good. Let's do it. Yeah, feel free to connect with us, guys. We're here for you guys. You want to connect and have some real people in your lives. Yeah.
Yeah. We are not avatars. We are real people.
Yet. Not yet.
All right, everybody. Peace.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.